The orphan boy sang to pay for his grandmother's surgery, but a meeting with a strange woman at the cafe helped him learn about his long-lost father. Before we dive in, let us know. What time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. The soft sound of piano keys filled the small, dimly lit apartment in New York City, wrapping around the walls like a warm embrace. At 15, Alex was a lanky boy with tousled brown hair and an earnest look in his hazel eyes, often lost in melodies that transported him away from the struggles of everyday life. He sat at the dusty piano, fingers dancing over the keys, drawing out notes of a jazz standard that he had heard from his grandmother, Maggie, countless times. The notes echoed through the modest living room, adorned with faded photographs of a younger Maggie performing on grand stages, her smile radiant and full of life. Maggie, once a celebrated pianist, now occupied the corner of the room in a worn-out armchair, wrapped in a blanket, her frail figure a stark contrast to the vibrant woman captured in the photographs. She listened, her eyes closed, allowing the music to wash over her. But behind her serene expression lay the toll of age and the weariness of a long battle with her health. "Grandma," Alex said softly as he finished the tune, "do you think I could play at one of those cafes someday, like you used to?" Maggie opened her eyes, a gentle smile spreading across her face. "Of course you can, Alex. You have the talent. It runs in our blood. Just remember, it's not just about playing, it's about touching hearts." Alex nodded, but a nagging feeling tugged at him. He had always wondered about his parents, questions that seemed to linger like shadows in the corners of his mind. Whenever he dared to ask Maggie, her expression would cloud with a mixture of sadness and determination. "Your mother, she died when you were just a baby," she would say, her voice laced with a sorrow that made Alex's heart ache. "And your father, he left without a trace to protect you." Those words haunted him. Why had his father chosen to leave? Why did he have to protect him? The answers always evaded him, slipping through his fingers like grains of sand. Yet, he clung to the love and warmth Maggie provided, which filled most of the void. But that love felt fragile, and the reality of their situation was beginning to weigh heavily on both of them. One evening, after returning from school, Alex noticed something was off. Maggie was unusually quiet, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to pour herself a glass of water. "Grandma, are you okay?" he asked, concern etched across his young face. Maggie brushed it off, but Alex could see the strain in her eyes. Over the next few days, her condition worsened. The coughing fits became more frequent, and she grew paler, like the fading photographs on the walls. Finally, one evening, as Alex returned home from school, he found her slumped over the dining table. Panic surged through him. He called for help, his heart racing as he dialed 911, praying that they would arrive in time. At the hospital, the doctor's words were a blur, but Alex caught snippets. "Serious condition, expensive surgery, we need to act fast." His world crumbled around him. They had little savings, and he had no idea how they would afford the treatment. Sitting in the sterile waiting room, fear clawed at his insides. He felt utterly helpless, overwhelmed by the prospect of losing the only family he had left. Tears threatened to spill as he grasped the reality of their dire situation. In that moment of despair, a flicker of determination ignited within him. Alex realized that his only hope lay in his musical talent. It had always been a shared joy between him and Maggie. With a plan forming in his mind, he vowed to use his voice to raise money for her surgery. He would sing for her. He would do whatever it took to save her. As he sat in that hospital waiting room, he made a silent promise to himself. He would not let fear dictate his life. The next morning, with a sense of purpose that fueled him, Alex made his way to the streets of New York. The bustling city was alive, and the familiar sights felt both comforting and overwhelming. He could hear the distant sounds of street performers, musicians playing their hearts out for loose change, and the occasional applause. This was his chance. With a borrowed guitar from Jake, a talented friend from the orphanage, Alex found a spot on a busy sidewalk near Central Park. As he set up, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, but also a spark of hope igniting within him. He took a deep breath, feeling the cool morning air fill his lungs. "Okay, just like we practiced," he whispered to himself. He strummed a few chords to get a feel for the guitar, heart pounding in anticipation. With one final glance around at the bustling crowds, he began to sing. His voice rose above the noise of the city, a soulful rendition of "Stand By Me" that echoed with raw emotion. As he sang, Alex poured every ounce of feeling into the music, his thoughts consumed by his grandmother's struggle and his determination to help her. People started to stop and listen, drawn in by the haunting quality of his voice and the passion he exuded. Within minutes, a small crowd began to gather, listening intently. Alex's nerves faded as he saw their faces, captivated by his performance. He strummed the guitar confidently, letting the music carry him away from the harsh reality waiting for him. After finishing the song, applause erupted around him. Alex smiled, his heart swelling with hope. He had done it. He had reached people with his music. As the crowd began to disperse, a few kind souls approached, slipping money into his guitar case. Each crumpled bill and shiny coin felt like a small victory, a step closer to saving his grandmother. Emboldened by his success, Alex decided to take his performances further. He sought out opportunities to play at local venues, aiming for a bigger stage. After some searching, he heard about a cafe called Melody Cafe, a popular spot known for showcasing local talent. It was a long shot, but he needed to try. As he approached the cafe later that week, his heart raced with nerves and excitement. The building was elegantly lit, with soft jazz music spilling out into the street. Gathering his courage, Alex stepped inside. The cafe was bustling, filled with patrons enjoying their meals and drinks, all while listening to live music. He approached the bar, where a middle-aged man with a sharp suit and a discerning look stood. This was Mr. Vince, the cafe owner. "Excuse me, sir," Alex said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm here to ask if I could perform. I need a job, and I can sing." Mr. Vince raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised to see such a young boy in his establishment. "You're just a kid. This isn't a place for someone your age." Alex felt a surge of frustration, but quickly composed himself. "I know I'm young, but I have a passion for music. I can sing well, and I promise I won't let you down." His earnestness caught Mr. Vince's attention. "All right, I'll give you a shot," Mr. Vince finally said, his tone softening. "But you need to keep your age a secret. And if you don't have what it takes, this will be your first and last performance." With relief washing over him, Alex nodded eagerly. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. The following week, Alex prepared for his first performance at Melody Cafe. He practiced tirelessly, choosing a classic jazz piece to showcase his voice. The night arrived, and the cafe was packed. The dim lighting and the sound of clinking glasses created an intimate atmosphere. As he stepped onto the small stage, nerves fluttered in his stomach. He took a deep breath, letting the ambience of the cafe wash over him. He glanced at the audience, faces filled with curiosity and anticipation. With the first notes of "Fly Me to the Moon" escaping his lips, everything else faded away. The room fell silent, and all eyes were on him. His voice, smooth and soulful, filled the space. He poured his heart into the song, each note resonating with the pain and hope he felt for his grandmother. By the time he finished, the cafe erupted in applause. Alex stood frozen for a moment, soaking in the overwhelming rush of emotion. He had done it. He had made an impression. As he stepped off the stage, Mr. Vince approached him with a nod of approval. "You've got real talent, kid," he said, a smile creeping across his face. "I'll hire you for regular performances. Keep it up, and we might just make a star out of you." Alex couldn't believe it. This was just the beginning. With each performance, he felt closer to his goal of raising enough money for Maggie's surgery, and with every note he sang, he honored the bond they shared. As the weeks passed, Alex found his rhythm at Melody Cafe. His performances became a highlight for the cafe's patrons, and word of his remarkable voice began to spread throughout the neighborhood. Each time he stepped onto the stage, he felt a familiar rush of adrenaline mixed with a sense of purpose. Singing was no longer just an escape. It was a lifeline for him and Maggie. One evening, after finishing a lively rendition of "Ain't Misbehavin'," the audience erupted into applause. Alex's heart swelled with pride as he took his bow, glancing at the smiling faces in the crowd. It was a far cry from the quiet, lonely nights at the orphanage. In that moment, he felt like he belonged. After the show, he noticed Mrs. Mary, the kind-hearted manager of the orphanage, seated at a corner table with a proud smile. She had come to support him, and he was grateful for her presence. As he made his way over to her, she clapped her hands together in delight. "You were fantastic, Alex," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. "I always knew you had it in you." "Thanks, Mrs. Mary," he replied, beaming. "I'm trying to raise money for Grandma's surgery. Every little bit helps." She nodded, her expression turning serious. "I can help, you know. Just let me know if you need anything. You're not alone in this." That night, Alex returned to the orphanage feeling lighter. He had earned a decent amount in tips from the cafe, and knowing that people were starting to believe in him fueled his determination. Each performance brought him closer to his goal, and he could almost taste the victory that awaited him. As his popularity grew, so did his friendship with Jake. They spent hours practicing together, sharing ideas and musical influences. Jake introduced Alex to various genres, from blues to rock, expanding his repertoire and pushing him to experiment with his voice. One evening, while they were jamming in Alex's room, Jake suggested, "You should write your own song, man. You have a story to tell, and people would connect with it." The idea lingered in Alex's mind. He had always sung covers, but he realized that writing his own song could channel his emotions more authentically, especially his feelings for Maggie and the urgency of their situation. He started to brainstorm lyrics, scribbling them in a notebook that had once belonged to his grandmother. Days turned into weeks, and the cafe became his second home. On a particularly busy Friday night, Mr. Vince pulled Alex aside. "I need to talk to you," he said, his tone serious. "You've been a hit here, kid. I'm considering featuring you in a special event next month, a showcase for local talent. It could be your big break." Alex's heart raced. "Really? What would that mean for me?" "If you impress the right people, it could lead to contracts and opportunities outside of this cafe," Mr. Vince explained, crossing his arms. "But you'll need to be ready. This isn't just a regular gig. You'll be performing in front of music producers and other industry folks." Excitement bubbled within him, but so did anxiety. This was his chance to not just help Maggie, but to make a name for himself. "I'm ready. Just tell me what I need to do." "Practice hard and write that original song," Mr. Vince advised. "Make sure it showcases who you are as an artist, and remember, be yourself on that stage." With renewed vigor, Alex threw himself into preparing for the showcase. He spent hours writing and rewriting his song, pouring his heart into the lyrics. He wanted to capture the essence of his relationship with Maggie, the struggles they faced, and his hopes for the future. In the meantime, Mrs. Mary continued to support him, encouraging him to keep focused and reminding him to balance his music with his studies. "Education is important too, Alex," she would say, "but don't lose sight of your dreams." With her encouragement, Alex managed to keep up with his schoolwork while dedicating his evenings to music. He practiced diligently, rehearsing in front of the mirror, imagining the crowd cheering for him at the showcase. The day of the event arrived, and the cafe buzzed with energy. Patrons filled the seats, their chatter blending with the clinking of glasses. As Alex stood backstage, nerves began to creep in. He could hear the sounds of the previous performers, and the weight of expectation pressed heavily on his shoulders. Jake appeared beside him, a reassuring smile on his face. "You've got this, man. Just remember why you're here. Sing for Grandma. Sing for yourself." With a deep breath, Alex stepped onto the stage, feeling the warmth of the spotlight as it illuminated him. The crowd quieted, all eyes on him. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, feeling the love and support from Maggie and his friends enveloping him. As he began to play the first notes of his original song, A Song for You, the room fell into a hushed silence. Each lyric flowed from his heart, resonating with raw emotion. He sang about love, loss, and the undying bond he shared with Maggie. It was a testament to their journey, to the struggles they faced together. When he finished, the audience erupted into applause, their cheers ringing in his ears like music itself. For a brief moment, Alex felt invincible. He had poured his soul into that song, and the connection he felt with the crowd was overwhelming. After the performance, as he stepped off the stage, Mr. Vince was waiting for him, a proud grin on his face. "That was incredible, Alex. You captured everyone's heart. I can't wait to see what happens next." Alex's heart raced as he felt the validation wash over him. He had done it. He had shared his story, and people had listened. The buzz of excitement in Melody Cafe lingered long after the showcase had ended. Alex basked in the glow of his success, his heart still racing from the exhilaration of performing his original song. Patrons chatted animatedly about the night, but amidst the joyful atmosphere, Alex felt an undercurrent of anticipation. He knew he had to keep pushing forward, especially with the looming costs of his grandmother's surgery weighing heavily on his mind. The following week, Alex's performances at the cafe drew larger crowds, and he began to gain a local following. With every song he sang, he felt more at home on stage, channeling his emotions into his music. But he also felt an eagerness to explore new horizons, to take risks, and connect with more people. One particularly busy Friday night, as he was preparing for his set, a well-dressed woman caught his eye. She sat alone at a corner table, her gaze fixated on the stage with an intensity that made Alex's pulse quicken. There was something familiar about her, yet he couldn't quite place it. Perhaps it was the way she leaned forward, captivated by the music, or the hint of sadness that flickered in her eyes. As Alex began to play his guitar and sing, he tried to focus on his performance, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the woman. He noticed her nodding along to the music, her expression changing with every note. It felt as if she were absorbing not just the melodies, but the emotions behind them. After finishing a lively rendition of Feeling Good, Alex stepped off the stage, wiping the sweat from his brow. He glanced toward the woman again, and to his surprise, she was standing up, making her way toward him. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "That was beautiful. You have an incredible gift." "Thank you," Alex replied, feeling a mixture of pride and shyness. "I'm glad you enjoyed it." "I'm Sarah," she introduced herself, extending a hand. "I just moved here after some personal losses. I needed a place to unwind, and your music struck a chord with me." "Alex," he said, shaking her hand. Her grip was warm and reassuring, and he felt an immediate connection. As they talked, Sarah's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "You remind me of someone I used to know, a singer named Mark. He had a voice that could move mountains. You have that same quality." Alex's heart raced at the mention of Mark. Could it be possible? I've heard that name before," he stammered. "My grandmother used to talk about him, but I don't know much." "Your grandmother?" Sarah's expression shifted to one of surprise. "What's her name?" "Maggie," Alex replied cautiously. "She was a pianist." A flicker of recognition crossed Sarah's face. "Maggie? The Maggie?" she whispered, almost to herself. "Do you know her?" Alex asked, feeling a surge of curiosity. "I knew her long ago," Sarah said, her voice filled with emotion. "She was extraordinary. I was in love with Mark, and he vanished without a word. I always wondered what happened to him." Alex's mind raced. This woman, this stranger, had a connection to his family that was deeper than he had imagined. Could you know anything about my father?" he asked, a hopeful tremor in his voice. Sarah hesitated, her gaze drifting to the floor as if searching for the right words. "I don't know for sure, but if you're Mark's son, there are things you deserve to know." Before Alex could respond, the cafe's atmosphere shifted. A commotion erupted from the back of the room as a group of rowdy patrons entered, laughing loudly and bumping into tables. The noise disrupted their conversation, and Sarah's expression changed, becoming distant. "I should go," she said, her voice barely audible over the din. "But please, I want to help you. Can we meet again?" "Of course," Alex replied eagerly, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and anxiety. "Let me know when you're free." As Sarah left the cafe, Alex stood frozen, a whirlwind of thoughts swirling in his mind. Who was Mark, really? Why did Sarah look so pained when she mentioned him? More importantly, could she help him uncover the truth about his family? The following days were a blur of performances and practice, but his thoughts kept returning to Sarah. He found himself pouring these feelings into his music, writing new lyrics that reflected his confusion and longing for answers. Then, one evening, Sarah texted him, inviting him to meet at a nearby park. Alex felt a rush of anticipation as he arrived, the park alive with the sounds of laughter and distant music. He spotted her sitting on a bench, her expression thoughtful, as if she were contemplating something significant. "Thanks for coming," she said, smiling as he approached. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," Alex began, feeling the weight of the conversation ahead. "About my father." Sarah nodded, her expression serious. "I want you to understand that whatever I tell you may change how you see your family. Are you ready for that?" Alex swallowed hard, the gravity of her words sinking in. "I need to know." With a deep breath, Sarah began to share stories of her past with Mark, recounting their shared dreams and the music they created together. As she spoke, Alex felt a growing connection to a part of himself he had never known. Each tale was filled with laughter, love, and ultimately, heartache. "He had a talent like yours," Sarah continued, her eyes shining with memories. "But one day, he just disappeared. I thought I'd lost him forever." "Why did he leave?" Alex asked, feeling a mix of anger and sorrow. "I don't know the full story," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But I believe it had to do with things beyond his control. He loved you both too much to put you in danger." As Sarah spoke, Alex's mind raced. His heart ached for the father he never knew, and yet he felt a strange comfort in Sarah's words. Perhaps understanding Mark would also bring him closer to understanding himself and his past. The vibrant sounds of the city filled the air as Alex walked alongside Sarah, the weight of her revelations heavy in his mind. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows on the pavement as they made their way through the park. Alex felt a mix of excitement and dread. The pieces of his life were beginning to align, yet the unknown loomed like a dark cloud overhead. "Do you really think my father left to protect us?" he asked, glancing sideways at Sarah, whose expression was pensive. "I believe he had his reasons," Sarah replied, her voice soft but firm. "Love can make people do drastic things, even if it seems wrong to us later, but I think it's time you talk to your grandmother about all of this." "Talking to Grandma might open a can of worms," Alex said, his stomach tightening at the thought. "She's already been through so much. What if she doesn't want to revisit those memories?" "But don't you deserve to know the truth?" Sarah countered gently. "You have every right to understand where you came from and what really happened. It could help you and your grandmother heal." Alex nodded, the weight of her words settling over him. He understood that this was a conversation he needed to have, no matter how difficult it might be. As they walked, he formulated a plan to approach Maggie that evening after dinner. When he returned home, the familiar sights greeted him: the worn-out couch, the small kitchen table cluttered with bills, and the piano that stood as a reminder of better days. Maggie was in the kitchen, preparing a simple meal, the soft glow of the evening light illuminating her features. "Hey, Grandma," Alex called, trying to sound casual. "Can we talk after dinner? There's something important I need to ask you." Maggie paused, her hands stilling as she turned to face him. The worry lines on her forehead deepened. "Of course, dear. Is everything all right?" Alex nodded, though his heart raced. He helped her set the table, trying to distract himself from the heavy conversation ahead. They sat down to eat, and as they shared small talk about his day and her progress, Alex felt the tension build within him. Once dinner was finished, Alex took a deep breath, his palms sweaty against the table. "Grandma, I met someone who knew my father," he began, gauging her reaction. Maggie's expression shifted, her eyes widening slightly. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with concern. "Her name is Sarah. She was close to him, a singer. She told me stories about their time together," Alex explained, watching his grandmother closely. "She believes that my father left to protect us, and I need to know why." The silence that followed felt heavy and charged. Maggie lowered her gaze, her fingers tracing the edge of the table. "I always hoped you would never have to learn about that part of your life," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, Grandma, I need to understand. You've always told me my father left to keep me safe, but I don't know the details. I feel like I'm missing a part of myself," Alex pleaded, leaning forward in earnest. Maggie took a deep breath, the weight of her memories evident on her face. "Your father, Mark, was a talented musician," she began slowly, her voice trembling with emotion. "He had a gift for connecting with people through his music, just like you, but there were things happening around him that I didn't understand. People he associated with had dangerous connections, and when I found out I was pregnant with you, He thought it was best for us to leave. Alex felt a knot form in his throat. What kind of danger? Why didn't he come back? Maggie's eyes glistened with unshed tears. He didn't know how to protect us while staying close. He believed that by disappearing, he could keep us safe. I never wanted to burden you with that knowledge, Alex. I thought it would be easier if you didn't know. But it's not easier! I have so many questions, Alex burst out, frustration bubbling over. What if he didn't really leave us? What if something happened to him? Alex, Maggie's voice was soft, yet firm. I don't know what happened after he left. I never heard from him again. I just hoped that he was alive and safe. The room fell silent as Alex processed his grandmother's words. A mix of anger, sadness, and confusion swirled within him. I need to find out the truth, Grandma. I can't live with these questions anymore. Maggie's gaze softened, and she reached out, placing her hand on top of his. I understand. Just promise me that you'll be careful. The world is not as simple as it seems, and sometimes the truth can bring pain. I promise, Alex replied, determination flickering in his chest. I have to know more about my father. Sarah is helping me. She wants to find out what happened to him. Maggie nodded, though concern etched across her features. Then I will support you in this journey, but remember to protect your heart. Not everything is as it appears. With that, Alex felt a surge of hope mixed with resolve. This was a turning point, a moment that would define his path forward. He now had the courage to confront the past, to seek the answers that had eluded him for so long. The next day, armed with new information and a sense of purpose, Alex met with Sarah. They sat at their usual bench in the park, the sounds of laughter and life swirling around them, yet the atmosphere felt charged with anticipation. I talked to my grandmother, Alex began, excitement bubbling within him. She shared some details about my father. I think we're closer to uncovering the truth. Sarah's eyes lit up. That's great. What did she say? Alex recounted Maggie's revelations, detailing Mark's musical talent and the dangers that had driven him away. As he spoke, he saw a flicker of understanding in Sarah's eyes. It sounds like there's more to this story than we realize, she said thoughtfully. If Mark was involved with dangerous people, it might explain why he vanished. We need to dig deeper. With Sarah's encouragement, they decided to hire a private investigator who specialized in missing persons. Alex felt a renewed sense of hope as they discussed the plan, his heart racing at the thought of finally uncovering the truth about his father. As they left the park that day, Alex felt lighter, the burden of uncertainty lifting just a little. He was no longer alone in this quest. He had Sarah by his side, and together they would unravel the mystery of his father's past. The days that followed Alex's conversation with his grandmother were filled with a mixture of hope and anxiety. He could hardly concentrate on school. Thoughts of his father swirled in his mind like autumn leaves caught in a whirlwind. Each passing moment brought him closer to the decision he knew he had to make. After school one day, Alex met with Sarah at their favorite bench in the park. The golden sunlight filtered through the trees, creating a warm, inviting atmosphere, but Alex felt a storm brewing inside him. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. Sarah, he began, I've been thinking a lot about what my grandmother told me. I want to find my father. I need to understand why he left. Sarah looked at him, her expression serious. Are you sure you're ready for that? What if you find something you're not prepared for? I don't care, Alex replied, determination shining in his eyes. I can't live with this uncertainty any longer. I need to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Okay, Sarah said, her voice steady. Then we'll figure this out together. Let's start by getting in touch with a private investigator. I know a few people who might help. With newfound resolve, Alex felt the weight of his decision settle into his chest. He spent the rest of the afternoon discussing their plan with Sarah, brainstorming questions they wanted to ask and potential leads to follow. Later that week, they met with a private investigator named Mr. Thompson, a seasoned man with a graying beard and a keen eye for detail. In his modest office filled with photographs and case files, Alex shared everything he knew about his father. I understand you're looking for Mark, Mr. Thompson said, his voice calm and authoritative. This can be a delicate matter, but I'll do my best to help you find answers. I'll start by looking into his last known whereabouts and any connections he may have had. Thank you, Alex replied, a mix of hope and fear coursing through him. "I just want to know what happened, why he left." "Understandable," Mr. Thompson said. "But remember, the truth can sometimes be more complicated than we expect." As Mr. Thompson began his work, Alex found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The anticipation of discovering his father's fate mingled with the fear of what those answers might reveal. Each day felt like an eternity as he waited for news. During this time, Alex continued to perform at Melody Cafe, channeling his feelings into his music. The songs he sang reflected his inner turmoil, the joy of his performances contrasting sharply with the pain of his unanswered questions. The cafe became a sanctuary for him, where he could escape momentarily from his worries. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, Alex was approached by a couple of patrons who introduced themselves as music producers. They had seen him perform several times and were impressed by his talent. "You've got something special, kid," one of them, a tall man with a wide-brimmed hat, said. "We'd like to talk to you about some opportunities in the industry." Alex felt a rush of excitement, but the thought of his father still weighed heavily on his mind. "Thank you, I'd love to," he replied, trying to keep his composure. As they discussed potential projects, Alex's thoughts drifted back to his search for his father. Could he really pursue a career in music while still feeling so incomplete? He needed to resolve the mystery of his past, but he also recognized that this opportunity might be the break he needed to help his grandmother. After the meeting with the producers, Alex met Sarah to share the news. "They want to work with me," he exclaimed, his eyes alight with excitement. "But I can't help but feel torn. I want to chase this opportunity, but I can't shake the feeling that I need to know about my dad first." "I understand," Sarah said, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "But you can do both. Finding your father doesn't have to take away from your music. If anything, it could give you more inspiration." Encouraged by Sarah's words, Alex decided to embrace both paths. He would continue to perform and pursue music while simultaneously seeking the truth about his father. With this determination, he felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. Days turned into weeks as Mr. Thompson worked tirelessly on the case, following leads and digging into Mark's past. Finally, one afternoon, Alex received a phone call that would change everything. "Alex, it's Mr. Thompson." The investigator's voice came through the line, serious and steady. "I have some information about your father." Alex's heart raced. "What did you find out?" "There's a man named Max living in a small town outside New York. He fits the description of your father, and there are records indicating he was involved in some serious incidents a few years back. It seems he's been keeping a low profile." "Max?" Alex echoed, confusion washing over him. "Is it really him?" "I can't confirm anything until you see him for yourself," Mr. Thompson explained, "but I suggest you prepare for a visit. It might bring up a lot of emotions." Alex felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. He turned to Sarah, who stood beside him, her expression reflecting his own uncertainty. "I think it's time," Alex said, determination flooding his voice. "I need to meet him." Sarah nodded, her support unwavering. "I'll be with you every step of the way." As Alex hung up the phone, he felt a sense of urgency mixed with fear. The journey he had embarked upon was taking a significant turn, and he was about to confront the man who had shaped his past in ways he had yet to understand. With every ounce of courage he could muster, Alex prepared himself for the road ahead. He knew that finding his father could either bring him closure or open up old wounds. But one thing was clear. He was ready to face the truth, no matter what it might reveal. The morning of the meeting with Max arrived with a mix of excitement and dread. Alex stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his shirt, his heart racing as he prepared for the most significant day of his life. Today he would finally confront the father he had longed to know, a man shrouded in mystery and unanswered questions. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking through his thoughts as she entered his small room at the orphanage. She had agreed to accompany him, a steady presence he was grateful for. "I think so," Alex replied, trying to mask his nerves with a confident smile. "I just hope I'm prepared for whatever I find out." "Just remember to stay calm. You've got this," Sarah encouraged, giving him an understanding nod. After a quick breakfast, they set off for the small town outside New York where Max lived. As they drove, Alex gazed out the window, watching the cityscape transform into rolling hills and quiet streets. The scenery was beautiful, but his mind was focused on the uncertainty that awaited him. What kind of man would he meet? What would he say? When they arrived at the modest house described by Mr. Thompson, Alex felt a knot form in his stomach. The exterior was unremarkable, weathered paint and an unkempt lawn, but it held the weight of 1,000 questions. With a deep breath, he turned to Sarah. "This is it." They approached the door together, and Alex raised his hand, hesitating for a moment before knocking. The sound echoed in the quiet surroundings, and his heart raced as they waited. Each second felt like an eternity. Finally, the door creaked open, revealing a man with graying hair and weary eyes. It was Max. The resemblance between him and Alex was undeniable. They shared the same facial structure and intense gaze, yet the lines of worry etched into Max's face hinted at a life filled with burdens. "Alex," Max said softly, recognition dawning on his face. I didn't think you'd come." "Can we talk?" Alex replied, trying to keep his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions raging inside him. "Of course. Please come in." Max gestured for them to enter. The inside of the house was dimly lit and sparsely furnished, reflecting years of solitude. Alex's eyes scanned the room, noting the old photographs hanging on the walls. Images of a younger Max with a woman who must have been Alex's mother. As they settled into the living room, silence enveloped them. Alex felt an overwhelming urge to demand answers, yet the weight of the moment held him back. "Why did you leave us?" he finally blurted out, his voice trembling with pent-up emotion. "You could have told us the truth." Max looked down, his expression heavy with regret. "I thought it was for the best. I was involved in some dangerous situations. People were after me, and I believed that by leaving, I could protect you and your mother." "Protect us?" Alex shot back, anger flaring in his chest. "You disappeared without a word. How is that protection? I grew up wondering who you were, why you left. You could have at least tried to come back." "I know," Max said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was a coward. I thought leaving would keep you safe from the dangers that followed me, but I see now how wrong I was." Tears of frustration pricked at the corners of Alex's eyes. "You were never there for me. All those years, I felt abandoned. Grandma had to raise me alone while you just ran away." Max's gaze was pained. "I never wanted to abandon you. I thought about you every day. I hoped that one day I could find a way back into your life without putting you in danger." Alex shook his head, feeling the anger bubble within him. "It's too late for excuses. You left me with nothing but questions and a broken family." The atmosphere thickened with tension, and Sarah, sensing the emotional weight of the conversation, interjected gently. "Max, if you truly want to reconnect with Alex, you need to be honest with him. What were you involved in that made you feel you had to leave?" Max hesitated, glancing at Alex before finally speaking. "There were people in my life who I thought could harm you. I was involved with the wrong crowd, musicians who crossed paths with dangerous people. I tried to distance myself, but it wasn't enough. I was afraid that if I stayed, it would put you both in jeopardy." "Why not tell us that?" Alex pressed. "Why not trust us to handle it together?" "I was scared, Alex," Max admitted, tears brimming in his eyes. "Scared of what could happen to you if those people found me. I thought by disappearing, I could shield you from that world." "Your solution was to leave us? To let us suffer?" Alex felt a deep sense of betrayal. "I can't believe you thought that was okay." Silence filled the room again, heavy and suffocating. Alex felt torn between anger and a desperate desire to connect with the father he never knew. He wanted to yell, to lash out, but a part of him longed for reconciliation. He could see the pain in Max's eyes, the regret that reflected his own. "I can't change the past," Max said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I want to be here for you now, if you'll let me." "Let you," Alex echoed, struggling to process the whirlwind of emotions. "You think it's that easy, after all these years?" "I know I have a long way to go to earn your trust," Max replied, a plea in his voice, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." As Alex stared into his father's eyes, he realized that the journey ahead would not be easy. There were wounds to heal and trust to rebuild, but perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance for forgiveness. I don't know if I can just forgive you, Alex said, his voice wavering, but I'm willing to try. I want to understand. Max nodded, relief flooding his features. Thank you, Alex. I'll do everything I can to prove to you that I'm here to stay. The air in the room shifted slightly as the tension eased. While Alex knew that this was just the beginning of a long and arduous path, he felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. As they sat together, Alex began to see the man before him, not just as the father who had abandoned him, but as a person who had also faced struggles and made mistakes. Perhaps they could find a way to bridge the gap that years of silence had created. After a long conversation filled with shared stories and painful memories, Alex and Max began to lay the groundwork for a new relationship. It would take time, but they were both willing to navigate the complexities together. As they left Max's home, Alex felt a sense of relief mingled with uncertainty. The past was still there, a shadow that lingered. The days following Alex's meeting with his father, Max, were a whirlwind of emotions. Alex found himself grappling with the complexities of their newfound relationship, oscillating between anger, confusion, and a tentative sense of hope. He had begun to learn about the man who had left him, but questions still lingered in his mind like uninvited guests. Determined to uncover the truth about his father's past, Alex and Sarah decided to follow up with Mr. Thompson, the private investigator. They met him at his office, a small, cluttered space filled with files and photographs pinned to the walls. "Good to see you both," Mr. Thompson greeted them, looking up from a file. "I've been digging into Max's past and made some interesting discoveries." "What did you find?" Alex asked, his heart racing in anticipation. Mr. Thompson gestured for them to sit. "I located an old friend of Max's named Leo. He lives in a town not too far from here and might have valuable information about what led Max to leave." "Leo?" Sarah asked, her brow furrowing. "How do we know he'll talk to us?" "I'll arrange a meeting," Mr. Thompson assured them. "But be prepared. The truths we uncover may not be easy to hear." The following week, they drove to the small town where Leo lived, the sun setting in hues of orange and pink, casting a warm glow on the world outside. Alex felt a mixture of excitement and dread. What would they learn about his father? They arrived at Leo's modest home, the air thick with anticipation. After a brief knock, a middle-aged man with graying hair opened the door. His eyes flickered with recognition as he took in Alex's resemblance to Max. "Alex," Leo said, surprise coloring his voice. "It's good to finally meet you. Your father has spoken about you often." "Thank you for seeing us," Alex replied, trying to gauge the man's demeanor. "Mr. Thompson said you might know more about why my father left." Leo stepped aside, inviting them in. The living room was decorated with photos of a younger Max and Leo during happier times, their smiles radiating joy and camaraderie. "I knew your father well," Leo began, his voice steady but somber. "We were close friends, but things took a dark turn. Max was a talented musician, but he got caught up in a world that was dangerous." "What do you mean?" Alex pressed, leaning forward, eager for answers. Leo sighed, running a hand through his hair. "There were people he associated with who were involved in illegal activities. Max thought he could protect you and your mother by distancing himself. When he felt the danger closing in, he made the hardest choice of his life." "Why didn't he just tell us?" Alex asked, frustration creeping into his voice. "Why leave without a word?" "Because he was afraid," Leo said, his eyes reflecting understanding. "He believed that by leaving, he was ensuring your safety. But he carried the burden of that decision every day." Alex absorbed Leo's words, a mix of empathy and anger churning within him. He wanted to understand his father, to forgive him, but it was hard to let go of the hurt. "Did he ever try to come back?" Alex asked, his voice trembling slightly. Leo shook his head. "Max was convinced that he could never return. He thought that the danger he left behind would follow him. I was the last to see him before he vanished from our circle. He always spoke of you with love and regret." Sarah, who had been quietly listening, asked, "Do you know who those dangerous people were?" Leo's expression darkened. "There were whispers of a gang that targeted musicians who didn't pay their dues. They had a way of making sure people understood the consequences of crossing them." Alex's stomach twisted at the thought of his father being caught up in such a dark world. "Did Max ever mention names? Any specific people?" "There was one," Leo said, his tone grim. "A man named Victor. He was ruthless and had a reputation for being unforgiving. If Max crossed him, he could have put you both in grave danger. A chill ran down Alex's spine. Did my father know how serious it was? Did he think they would come after us? I can't say for sure, Leo replied, but I believe he acted out of desperation. He loved you, Alex. He wanted to protect you in the only way he knew how. The weight of the revelations settled heavily on Alex's shoulders. The man he had longed to know had faced unimaginable pressures and had made choices that, while painful, were rooted in love. Yet, it still didn't ease the hurt of abandonment. "Thank you for being honest with us," Alex said, struggling to maintain composure. "I just wish he would have trusted me enough to explain." Leo nodded, his eyes sympathetic. "You have every right to feel that way. Trust takes time to rebuild, and it won't happen overnight." After their meeting with Leo, Alex and Sarah returned to New York, each lost in their thoughts. As they walked through the city streets, Alex contemplated the new information he had received. He felt a mix of sadness for the choices Max had made and anger that he had to bear the consequences. When they arrived at the orphanage, Alex found himself standing in front of the piano. He sat down, the familiar keys beneath his fingers grounding him. As he began to play, the music flowed through him, channeling the emotions swirling within. Each note became a release, a way to process the tangled feelings of love, loss, and longing. Sarah watched quietly from the doorway, recognizing the healing power of music. She knew that Alex was working through his emotions, and she was grateful to be there as a support. After finishing his impromptu performance, Alex turned to Sarah, a new determination shining in his eyes. "I need to confront my father again. I need him to understand what this has done to me." Sarah nodded, her expression serious but supportive. "If that's what you feel you need to do, then I'll be right there with you." The days that followed Alex's meeting with Leo were filled with anticipation and renewed determination. Armed with the truth about his father's past, he felt a powerful urge to confront Max once more. This time, he was ready to seek the understanding he desperately craved and to express the pain he had carried for far too long. Alex and Sarah arranged to meet Max at a cafe nearby, a neutral ground where they could discuss everything openly. As they approached the cafe, the familiar aroma of coffee and pastries wafted through the air, but Alex could hardly appreciate it. His heart raced with a mix of anxiety and hope. "I know this is a big deal," Sarah said, sensing his tension. "Just remember, you're stronger than you think. You've come so far." "I know, but it's just—" "I need him to understand how I feel," Alex replied, taking a deep breath. "I need to be honest about how his choices impacted my life." They stepped into the cafe, and Max was already seated at a corner table, looking slightly nervous. His eyes lit up as he spotted Alex and Sarah, but there was an undercurrent of apprehension in his expression. "Hey, thanks for meeting with us," Alex said, forcing a smile as they took their seats. "Of course," Max replied, his voice low. "I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation. I want to be here for you, Alex." "Good," Alex said, his determination solidifying. "I want to talk about what Leo said. I need to understand everything, not just bits and pieces." Max nodded, his expression serious. "I understand. I owe you that much." "Why did you never come back?" Alex began, his voice steady. "You had to know how much we needed you." Max sighed, looking down at his hands. "I thought it was for the best. I was convinced that if I came back, it would put both of you in danger. I thought disappearing would keep you safe." "Safe?" Alex echoed, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "You think running away was the answer? I spent my whole life wondering if you even cared." "I did care." Max's voice rose slightly, drawing the attention of nearby patrons. He took a breath to compose himself, his eyes pleading for understanding. "You have to believe me. Every day I regretted my decision. I wanted to reach out, but I was afraid of what might happen if I did." "Afraid of what?" Alex pressed. "Of us finding out you were a coward?" Max's expression shifted to one of deep pain. "No, afraid of the darkness I left behind. I didn't want that life to follow you, but I realize now that in trying to protect you, I only pushed you further away." Sarah, who had been quietly observing, interjected. "Alex deserves to know the truth, Max. You can't keep hiding behind your choices. If you want to rebuild this relationship, you need to be honest. Max nodded, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. There were people I got involved with who were dangerous. I was trying to make a name for myself in music, and I got pulled into a world I couldn't escape. When I realized what was happening, I thought the best course of action was to disappear. Alex felt the weight of those words, the pain and regret etched in his father's face. "And the gang?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What about them?" "They were ruthless," Max admitted, his gaze steady. "I thought if I left, they would stop looking for me. I didn't want you or your mother to be caught in the crossfire of my mistakes." Silence hung between them, heavy and thick. Alex processed Max's words, feeling a mixture of empathy for the man before him and resentment for the years lost. "You didn't trust us," he finally said, his voice low. "You thought you could protect us by running away." "I was wrong," Max acknowledged, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I see that now. I just wanted to keep you safe, but I realize I hurt you more than I protected you. I never meant for it to be this way." Alex took a deep breath, feeling the layers of pain begin to peel away. "I want to try and understand you, Dad, but it's going to take time." Max nodded, relief flooding his features. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back, Alex. I want to be part of your life now, if you'll let me." As they continued their conversation, a sense of hope began to blossom within Alex. Despite the pain of the past, he could see a glimmer of possibility for the future, a chance to reconnect with his father and forge a new path together. After their meeting, Alex and Sarah walked through the bustling streets of New York, the energy of the city invigorating him. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked, her tone encouraging. "I feel hopeful," Alex admitted, a small smile forming on his lips. "I didn't expect to hear all that from him. It's a lot to process, but I think I can finally start to understand." "That's a great step forward," Sarah said, her smile brightening. "And remember, you're not alone in this. You have me, and now you have Max too." As they walked, Alex began to imagine what his future could hold. Maybe he could finally embrace his music career while navigating this new relationship with his father. There was a newfound sense of direction guiding him, and for the first time in years, he felt like he was on the right path. Later that week, Alex received an unexpected call from the music producers he had met previously. They wanted to discuss potential projects, and Alex felt a surge of excitement at the thought of pursuing his passion for music. With Sarah's encouragement, he prepared for the meeting, eager to explore the opportunities that awaited him. The prospect of recording his songs filled him with joy, and he couldn't help but think of how his journey had evolved, once filled with uncertainty, now brimming with promise. As he stepped into the studio for the first time, surrounded by professional equipment and instruments, Alex felt a rush of adrenaline. This was where he belonged. He could feel his father's presence in the back of his mind, reminding him of the importance of following his dreams. "Welcome to the studio, Alex," one of the producers greeted him, clapping him on the shoulder. "We're excited to hear what you've got." With that, Alex stepped up to the microphone, feeling the familiar rush of inspiration flow through him. As he began to sing, he poured all his emotions into the music, the joy, the pain, the longing, and the hope. In that moment, he knew that he was not just singing for himself. He was singing for his family, for his father, and for the future they could build together. The atmosphere in the recording studio was electric, the kind of energy that buzzed around Alex as he prepared to lay down his first track. He felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was his chance to express himself through music, to share his story with the world. Sarah stood nearby, offering a reassuring smile, her presence a comforting reminder that he was not alone. As the producer adjusted the sound levels, Alex took a deep breath. He could hear the faint sound of his heartbeat, a rhythmic reminder of the journey that had led him to this moment. He thought of his grandmother, Maggie, and the struggles she had faced, of Max, the father he was beginning to understand, and of the bond he was forging with Sarah, who had become a vital part of his life. "Ready when you are, Alex," the producer said, his voice steady and encouraging. With a nod, Alex stepped up to the microphone. The world around him faded, and all that mattered was the music. He closed his eyes, letting the melody wash over him, and began to sing. The lyrics poured from his heart, a blend of pain and hope that resonated in every note. As he sang, Alex felt a connection to his past, each word reflecting the struggles he had overcome. He was not just telling his story. He was reclaiming his narrative, transforming his pain into something beautiful. The sound engineer captured the raw emotion in his voice, ensuring that every note echoed the depth of his journey. After the session, Alex emerged from the studio, exhilarated. "That was amazing," he exclaimed, adrenaline coursing through him. "You've got a real talent, Alex," the producer praised, his eyes shining with excitement. "We can work with this. Let's schedule more sessions and get you ready for a demo." The following weeks were a whirlwind of creativity and collaboration. Alex poured himself into his music, writing new songs that reflected his evolving relationship with Max and his gratitude for Sarah's unwavering support. Each session in the studio brought him closer to realizing his dream, and with each track, he felt a little more like himself. As Alex's music career began to take off, he also made it a priority to spend time with his grandmother. Maggie's health had improved significantly after the surgery, and seeing her smile brought Alex immense joy. They would often sit together, sharing stories and listening to his new songs. He wanted to make her proud, and he knew that through music, he could honor her sacrifices. One afternoon, Alex invited Maggie to the studio to hear a few of his new tracks. As they walked through the familiar hallways, he could sense her excitement mingled with nerves. "I can't wait to hear what you've been working on," she said, her voice filled with warmth. Once inside the recording booth, Alex set up the speakers and pressed play. The sound filled the room, and he watched his grandmother's reaction closely. As the first notes played, Maggie's eyes widened, and a smile broke across her face. "Oh, Alex, this is beautiful," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with emotion. "You've poured your heart into this." "Thank you, Grandma," Alex replied, feeling a swell of pride. "I wanted to create something that reflected everything we've been through together." As the final notes faded, Maggie clapped her hands, tears glistening in her eyes. "You have a gift, my dear. I'm so proud of you." With each passing day, Alex continued to grow closer to Max, who was making a genuine effort to be a part of his life. They spent time together, sharing stories and bonding over music. Max began attending Alex's performances at Melody Cafe, where he watched his son sing with a sense of pride that was palpable. One evening, after an emotional performance that left the audience spellbound, Alex found Max waiting for him backstage. "You were incredible tonight," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "I can see how much this means to you." "Thanks, Dad," Alex replied, his heart swelling with warmth. "I couldn't have done it without your support." Max smiled, but there was a hint of vulnerability in his expression. "I'm still learning how to be a father. I want to make up for lost time, but I know it's going to take patience." "We can figure this out together," Alex said, feeling a sense of hope blossom within him. "I want us to have a real relationship. I'm willing to give you a chance." As their bond strengthened, Max shared more about his past, the struggles he had faced, and the choices he made. Alex listened, understanding that while the scars of the past would always remain, they could build a future together based on honesty and trust. Eventually, the day came for Alex to showcase his music at a larger venue, a local music festival that attracted talent from all over the city. The excitement in the air was palpable, and Alex felt a mix of nerves and exhilaration as he prepared to take the stage. His family and friends, including Sarah and Max, gathered in the audience, ready to support him. As he stepped onto the stage, the cheers of the crowd washed over him like a warm embrace. The lights brightened, illuminating the faces of those who had come to witness his journey. With every strum of the guitar and every note he sang, Alex felt a deep connection to his past and a profound appreciation for his present. He poured his heart into the performance, using music as a means of expressing his gratitude for the love and support that surrounded him. As the final song ended, the crowd erupted in applause, and Alex stood there, breathless and overwhelmed. It was in that moment that he truly understood the power of music. It had the ability to heal, to connect, and to create new beginnings. After the performance, Alex embraced his grandmother and Max, tears of joy streaming down his face. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. Maggie smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "You've always had this in you, Alex. We believed in you even when you didn't believe in yourself." Max stepped forward, his expression filled with sincerity. "I'm so proud of the man you've become, Alex. Thank you for giving me a chance." As they stood together, Alex felt a sense of belonging wash over him. He had found his voice, built a bridge to his father, and forged a bond with Sarah that would last a lifetime. The journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but together, they had created a new family founded on love, forgiveness, and hope. As the sun set on that unforgettable day, Alex knew that whatever lay ahead, he was ready to embrace it. With music as his guide, he would continue to write his story, and this time, he would make sure it was a beautiful one. Thank you for joining me for this story. I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel to stay updated on the heartfelt stories I'm passionate about sharing. Your support means the world to me and motivates me to keep creating. I'm truly grateful to have you on this journey with me.